a really good crowd. Isn't it wonderful weather that we have? We'll wait here just a few seconds and we'll get everybody seated and started. And look, everybody's looking so chipper and getting ready for some spring weather. I think we're in really good shape. We're glad to have you here. My name is Joe Williams. I'm president of Lake Granbury Waterfront Owners Association. And if everybody will stand, we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. And then follow that with the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. If you'll remain standing, we'll have Maurice Simpson, and he's coming up, and he'll do an invitation. Thank you.
Good evening. Our prayer focus tonight will be for water, Lake Granbury in particular. Eternal God, our Father, we come giving you all praises, Father. We come thanking you for the blessings that you have given us. We thank you for these officials that we have here, our leaders, in their efforts to be good stewards with what they have been given to see over, Father. Father, we are having some difficult times now with water. And Father, we don't want to come knock on your door for nothing. But we'll come asking for water in the name of Jesus, because you said you have not because you ask not. So Father, we asking you to let the cooling waters come. We thank you for the moisture that we've had already. We thank you for it, Father. We really do. But it's not enough. And we ask you that you give us a sufficient amount of water as your will provide you to do, Father. Father, we just want to thank you. We just want to thank you. And we ask in these blessings in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. My name is Judy McHugh, and I'm the Vice President of Lake Granbury Waterfront Owner Association. Many of you probably know me. I know many of you, and I'm so happy to see familiar faces back again. I have the great job of introducing two very select, wonderful group of people. First of all, I get to introduce the elected officials of our city and county. So if I can have all of the elected officials stand, please. As I try to catch all of them, because I think if I know who they are, I think you should know who they are. And I know a lot of you do know who they are. And we have Judge Darrell Cockerham. We have Mayor Nin Hewlett. We have on the City Council. Now, I don't know if there's a pecking order, so if there is, excuse me. I'll let you peck afterwards. Mickey Sharon, City Council. Mickey Sharon. I'm looking at, okay. Mickey Parsons, I'm so sorry. Of course I know who you are. And we have Steve Berry, Hood County Commissioner. Mike Lane, who I realized tonight belatedly that you're a constable and elected. And Gary Couch, City Council. Me. You. James Bieber, I'm so sorry. He's one of the new county commissioners. I'm so sorry. And I don't know you, ma'am. There you go. Jean Cochran, thank you so much. Rose Myers, where is she? I can't see her. Oh, there you go. There, okay, Rose Myers, the newly elected city council. Jim Geffer, you know who he is. Did I miss anybody? Oh, Tony, I'm so sorry. Tony Allen, City Council. Okay, Tony. Now you know I did that on purpose. I'll collect later. Now I'm going to introduce you to another very important select group of people, and they are the coalition that was formed to join the communities, to join Hood County, Lake Granbury Waterfront Owner Association, and City of Granbury. So with those people, please stand, the people that are on the coalition. As you can see, some of these people are doing double duty. 2 people from Hood County and 2 from Hood County Commission, 2 people from City Council, 2 people from Lake Granbury Waterfront Association, and 1 at-large member were chosen to represent us with the Haynes and Boone legal team to defend the Brazos River Authority's request for 400,000 more acre-feet of water. So that's Steve Berry, you've met, Tony Allen, Judge Cockerham, Todd Garner, Mickey Parsons, and Cullen Crisp. And this is so much fun. Okay, who's next? Mickey, you get to go next. I hope you enjoy the information we share with you tonight, and there's a bucket out front for donations, and if you want to join the LGWA, we welcome you. And there's also a bucket there if you have questions that we might be able to answer tonight, but if we can't answer them tonight, we'll try to answer them on Facebook. And don't hesitate to approach any of us, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Judy, I want to thank you and all the members of the LGWA for all your hard work and efforts on behalf of all these citizens and all the elected officials for your input and the things that you do for us. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Tonight I want to spend a little time talking about process, where we are, what's going on, and that kind of thing in terms of the coalition. The Brazos River Authority is currently in the process of applying for a water permit that would grant it control over virtually all the remaining available water in the Brazos River Basin from the head above Possum Kingdom all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. That permit application is subject to an ongoing contested case hearing before the State Office of Administrative Hearings. The Granbury Lake Coalition was formed to oppose or to be a part of that contested hearing. The City of Granbury, Hood County, and the Lake Granbury Waterfront Owners Association sought and were granted status as protesting parties in the contested case hearing. Our coalition came together out of the concern that BRA had failed to adequately consider the impact this proposed permit would have on Lake Granbury and on the surrounding communities that rely upon it. The coalition believes that the permit application as currently drafted does not comply with state requirements and that any such permit should not be granted without conditions that are protective of Lake Granbury. Lake Granbury is already at a record low levels and has been for the last 6 months. It's difficult to overstate the importance of the lake as a public resource in our community. Record low elevations have already had significant negative effects on the regional economy and environment. The residents and elected representatives of Hood County and the city of Granbury are extremely concerned about water levels in Lake Granbury and BRA's management of this important resource. Many in our community have already spent a great deal of time and money communicating our concerns to BRA, to elected state representatives, and to the public. Our objectives, simply stated, is to ensure the continuing viability of Lake Granbury through maintenance of historic lake levels. This is ultimately what drives our participation in this ongoing contested case hearing. From 1970, when Lake Granbury was filled, to 2007, BRA managed water levels in Lake Granbury within 3 feet of full, or 690 feet mean sea level, more than 96% of the time. As a result, the lake was virtually always usable for the recreational purposes that make it such a valuable community resource, including boating, swimming, and fishing. This was true even in the periodic drought conditions. As a result of these stable elevations, the city of Granbury literally grew up around the lake. Since 1970, the population of Hood County has grown from just over 6,000 to more than 50,000 a day. Much of our area's economic activity revolves around the lake, from restaurants and hotels to home sales to small businesses that depend on lake traffic. BRA has often emphasized that Lake Granbury exists for water supply purposes. Actually, their webpage originally said that it was a recreational resource. While this was the lake's original purpose and continues to be a major purpose today, there can be no question that over the years, the lake has become the central economic and recreational resource in our growing community. BRA's 2007 decision to shut down the hydropower facility at Possum Kingdom Lake changed the water supply equation for Lake Granbury. For years, the hydroelectric generation from the Morris Shepherd Dam at Possum Kingdom provided a significant incidental benefit to Lake Granbury in the form of a consistent water release, on the average of some 330,000 acre-feet per year between the closing of the dam in 2007. These hydropower releases help maintain consistent elevation levels, and when those releases were cut off, in Granbury and Hood County, we were naturally concerned. In decommissioning the hydropower facility, BRA fundamentally changed the management relationship between Possum Kingdom and Lake Granbury, a fact BRA acknowledged in 2010 when it hired half associates to analyze the relative impact of various drawdown levels on each lake. The stated goal of this half study was reasonable to develop a drawdown protocol that consistently resulted in a fair and balanced impact to the recreational facilities in both lakes. At the time the half study was released, Granbury and Hood County residents were unaware of any basis for questioning the study's conclusions that a 175 to 1 drawdown ratio would provide a balanced impact on the two lakes. It is now clear, however, that this management approach is not balanced, not fair, and in fact represents a significant reduction by more than half of the average historical hydropower releases from Possum Kingdom. The recent drought conditions have brought to light the inequity of this ratio, which disadvantages Lake Granbury and does not achieve the study's stated goal of a balanced impact. Lake Granbury is now almost completely unusable. Our water levels are currently record lows and have been lower than the previous record every day for the past 5.5 months. By contrast, the much deeper Possum Kingdom Lake, which is obviously affected by the same drought as Lake Granbury, is 5 feet above its record low and continues to provide some recreational opportunities. To be sure, the drought has contributed to lower lake levels all across the Brazos River Basin, but we believe much of the disproportionate impact being felt by Lake Granbury can be attributed to changes in BRA management practices over the last decade. Lower water levels pose very real consequences to the residents of the city of Granbury and Hood County. They threaten a regional economy that relies on a healthy lake for much of its activity. The Lake Granbury Economic Development Corporation recently released a study that analyzed Hood County's lake-related economy and attempted to assess the economic impact of lower water levels in Lake Granbury. The study confirms that extended reduction in lake levels seriously undermines the economic foundation of Granbury and Hood County, where lake-related properties account for almost 40% of the property tax base, and where tourism drives annual revenues for hotel occupancy taxes, sales taxes, and mixed beverage taxes. Lower lake levels also affect matters of environmental health and safety. For example, as water levels dropped to record lows in 2013, Lake Granbury saw a large number of fish kills as various pools of water were cut off from the main body of the lake. More recently, as months of record lows have produced acres of untamed underbrush over dry lake bed and in residential canals, county and state officials have been forced to consider the serious fire hazard proposed by this debris. Given the currently dry conditions, recent heavy freezes, and limited access to key areas of the lake bed due to the impassable terrain, our officials fear that even a small fire in the vegetation could end up burning out of control. Our seawalls and our canals are deteriorating on a daily basis. I walked out my back door yesterday and saw my neighbor's yard. In his yard, his sidewalk sinking in, his fences and his neighbor fences already caving into the big hole caused by the fact that the water's washing back off the front side of the seawall. Despite these circumstances, BRA has pressed forward with this application for the systems operation permit, which, based upon our review of BRA's file materials and presentations, would result in even more water being taken out of Lake Granbury. In addition, the BRA included the HAF study as an appendix to its water management plan, creating a very real possibility that the current unfair drawdown protocol would become a part of the BRA's operating requirements. While we do recognize the BRA's obligation to manage and preserve the state's water resources and to provide an adequate water supply both now, during challenging drought conditions, and in the future, BRA should discharge these obligations by treating all constituents fairly. Lake Granbury should not be forced to shoulder a disproportionate burden of the current drought conditions and of the BRA's objective to increase water yields. The Coalition believes that now is the ideal time for the BRA and the Coalition to work together to protect historic elevation levels in Lake Granbury. BRA has already been ordered to rework its permit application to account for the SB 3 or the Senate Bill 3 environmental flow standards. This abatement offers an opportunity for BRA to reconsider aspects of the permit application that may be a source of dispute when the contested case hearing resumes. While the Coalition fully intends to continue opposing the permit as currently drafted, we're not opposed merely for the sake of opposition. Our aim is a solution that protects historic elevation levels in Lake Granbury. Recent developments related to the Comanche Peak nuclear power plant demonstrate that the prospective uses of the full amount of water originally requested under the system operation permit are less supportable than before. On November 7, 2013, Luminant suspended its efforts with the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission to license Comanche Peak Units 3 and 4. According to the Texas Water Development Board, those units represented the single greatest need for water from the system's operating permit in Region G over the next 40 years. They accounted for roughly 90% of the identified need. With these units now off the table for the foreseeable future, BRA has a unique opportunity and a responsibility to consider possible solutions for preserving historic water levels in the Lake Granbury at relatively minimal cost to the amount of water available for other purposes. The Lake Granbury Coalition has only existed since August, and we think it's had tremendous success thus far in addressing Hood County's most pressing issue, the declining levels of Lake Granbury. The coalition formed out of the necessity to protect and preserve our county's most precious resource, Lake Granbury. A healthy Lake Granbury benefits all of our Hood County residents, our businesses, our taxpayers, our school systems, and the public service sector. It affects the overall quality of life for both residents and visitors to Hood County. Some of our successes, we think, are we've created a strong and united front to oppose the Brazos River Authority Permit 5851 that seeks to draw even more water from Lake Granbury. We've retained a reputable law firm, Haynes & Boones, to represent the coalition for the purposes of opposing BRA's permit in the hearing process. We've developed a solid strategy to oppose this permit until Lake Granbury has been properly protected. We've released a white paper that we think provides strong evidence of BRA's half study being fatally flawed. This has led to a recent acknowledgement by the BRA and our local state legislators that the half study needs to be reevaluated. The coalition has been successful in delaying the permit hearings twice. If the coalition had not been involved and had not recommended a new hearing dates, the hearings would have been over last month in January 2014, and the half study would have been enshrined inside the water management plan. And we would have been with that ratio forever. This delay in the permit process has given the coalition the opportunity to discuss the re-examination of the half study with the BRA and our state representatives. While we think the coalition has been successful so far, we will continue to be diligent and unrelenting. The coalition desires the half study to be re-examined using real-time data and correct assumptions. The coalition will continue to oppose the permit until protections are implemented that are reasonable, fair, and don't force Lake Granbury to shoulder a disproportionate economic burden due to the BRA's water management change. We continue to ask the question, why do you take the most water out of the smallest lake with the most economic impact? Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Our next guest speaker, being a part of the coalition, these are great guys, and you have to realize the amount of time that they put in from their work, from their job, it's pretty incredible. We meet with our legal team quite often, and we've got a really good legal team. But our next guest that's going to come up is going to talk a little bit about the half study, probably some flaws in the half study, and I think using the white paper there, he'll probably be able to go along with him. But that will be Todd Garner. Right?
Todd, before you get started, I want to correct a grievous mistake on my part. I know you're shocked. I made a mistake, but it was partly his fault because he wasn't sitting where he was supposed to. He's sitting way over there on the other side of the room. I would like for Wayne McKevin to stand and be recognized in front of he's the city manager, and he deserves recognition.
Good evening. My name is Todd Garner. I live on Lake Granbury and I serve on the steering committee for Haynes & Boone. I probably know too much about the water issues in Granbury. I wish I didn't. I've also made a few trips down to Waco, and I have the hat to prove it. So I actually thought we might be doing an auction tonight. So it's a Brazos River Authority hat. I will be covering the Haynes & Boone white paper tonight. Haynes and Boone was supposed to be here. Found out a few days ago that there were some snafus between, I guess, Beavers being here and our legal team being here. So I took over. I got the presentation last night at 4:30, and here I am. So I hope I don't suffer through it too much, but please bear with me as we go through it. I think Joe does plan on bringing back Haynes and Boone at a later date, and probably our hydrologist as well. I want to give you a Cliff Notes version of the white paper. What I really want to do is I want you to be piqued, your interest to be piqued, to be able to go and read it for yourself. There's a lot of good information in there. We have spent a lot of time. Our lawyers and hydrologists have spent a lot of time in really understanding the water management plan from the Brazos River Authority. But before I get started here, I would just like to see a show of hands of people that believe the only reason that the lake is low is the drought only. Is there anybody in the room that believes it is just the drought only? Okay, good. Not a single hand. And hopefully we will prove that here tonight. And actually that was also a test. I just wanted to see if the BRA was here. I'm just going to give them their hat back. Real world impact. This might be your backyard. I don't know. But you've obviously seen these pictures. Dry docks, dry canals, what it used to look like, what it looks like now. Fish kills. Fire hazard. The danger is real. There's a lot of areas on Lake Granbury that have significant fire hazards. And I think we have a few fire hazard pictures here. I'm sure Steve Berry has quite a few as well. Mickey mentioned the economic impact. I won't go too much into that, but it was a recent study that was commissioned by the Lake Granbury Economic Development Corporation that sought to quantify the impacts of Hood County and the city of Granbury. It was done last summer in 2013. They did take into account indicators like real estate activity, property tax base, employment statistics, hotel occupancy, sales, mixed beverage taxes, and tourism impact. And they also forecasted the long-term implications from lower lake levels. You guys have probably already seen it. Among the study's findings were that Hood County's property tax base is inextricably tied to Lake Granbury. In 2013, lake-related properties occupied only 6.8% of total land value in Hood County, but accounted for 35.9% of the tax base. Mickey mentioned earlier that the 27.9% of total homes in Hood County, but 44.2% of those residential homes are the economic tax base. When lake levels are down, lake-related properties become less attractive. I think pretty much everybody knew that. What about the drought? The Lake Granbury Coalition acknowledges that the drought has contributed to lower lake levels, but the data shows that Granbury is bearing a disproportionate burden of drought conditions. The BRA is seeking to withdraw even more water from the Brazos Basin, including Lake Granbury, and nearby Squaw Creek Reservoir is completely full. That's the lake that Luminant pulls from. To make the situation worse, the BRA is seeking to withdraw even more water out of Lake Granbury and the entire basin in the coming years. It is about 400,000 acre-feet of water additional from the Brazos Basin. To give you an idea, that's about, Lake Granbury is about 129,000 acre-feet. This slide depicts the current burden on Lake Granbury. We are lake number 4. That is how much water is diverted per year out of Lake Granbury. That's a huge amount of water. Under the systems operations permit, the projected draw on this heavily populated lake will be even more. That's how much it will be in 2025, according to the systems operation permit. That does include 3 and 4, and we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. Worse yet, the HAF report, which has been the source of so many problems between VRA and Granbury, was included in the Water Management Plan technical report, suggesting that it may become a necessary part of VRA's operating structure in the event the permit is approved. It's Appendix D. And that's just more information inside the Water Management Plan that basically confirms that the plan will be included. As Mickey mentioned, we do have a window of opportunity. What I just told you is the reason why the coalition opposes the systems operation permit and why we are all here today. We have a window of opportunity for us to work together to protect Lake Granbury. There has been an abatement of the permit. We have delayed the permit through the actions of Haynes and Boone and the coalition. The permit also has to be reworked due to our arguing that the SB 3 rules had to be included in the permit, so it's given us an additional opportunity. As well, you've probably seen in the news that Luminant has suspended the licensing for 3 and 4 currently. We believe the BRA can and should use this time to commit certain changes in management practices that will ease this disproportionate burden on Lake Granbury in the short run and ensure its health in the long run. Proposal number 1, increase the drawdown ratio between Possum Kingdom and Lake Granbury. Currently, we are at a 1.75 to 1 ratio with Possum Kingdom. This is a graph. Kind of squiggly. Looks like my 6th grade or 8-year-old took a pen to it. But basically, that is Possum Kingdom's historic elevations. The half-study most significant flaw is that it completely ignores the simplest and perhaps the most accurate measure of balance between the lakes: historical drawdown ratios. Residents of Lake Granbury and Possum Kingdom shape their lives around the historical patterns and characteristics of their respective lakes. The lake levels in Possum Kingdom, which is a much deeper lake, have historically fluctuated, and residents have built their recreational pursuits around that reality. As you can tell, closest to me is where it is today. You can see the lake elevations in previous years. They aren't even close to the lowest elevations that they've been at. Granbury, on the other hand, has remained relatively constant. You notice where I am currently is about the lowest it's been. Actually, it is the lowest it's been. It has been at historic lows for the past 4.5 months. PK, meanwhile, is still 5 feet above its previous record low from the time that Granbury has been impounded, and that was about 1970. If we look at the all-time worst drawdowns in PK history, the current drawdown would barely rank in the top 10. You can tell that it does not, or it's in the top 10, but barely. This is a depiction of the Possum Kingdom elevation lake level since 2012, and Granbury since 2012. Obviously, we were full in early 2012. We sank very rapidly because Possum Kingdom has not recovered. This slide here, I want to assume for a second that the HAF data, the data that was located in the HAF study is correct. I don't believe that that's the case, and neither does the coalition, but let's assume that that is the case right now. Our hydrologists performed a simple calculation using HAF data for the elevation levels at which various features go out of service. With that data, we can plot the respective outages under a number of drawdown ratios and elevation levels. So if you notice, this chart depicts the percentage of features out of service, and then you can see that Granbury, which is the red, Possum Kingdom is the blue, the red line is always more out of service than Possum Kingdom. So even according to their own study and the HAF's data, they still are not balanced. And in fact, sometimes that difference is often considerable. If you notice that when Possum Kingdom is 10 feet low, Granbury, according to their own data, is about, Possum Kingdom is about 50% out of service, and Granbury is about 70% out of service. Again, assuming that their data is correct. We ask, is this a balanced impact? On December 31st, 2013, just a couple of months ago, the USGS data reported that PK was at a 986.97 level, Granbury was at a 684.4 level. Using the half data, that means that on the first graph, that Possum Kingdom, 68% out of service, while Granbury was 81% out of service. Again, assuming the half data is correct. That means that the features out of service are 895 on Possum Kingdom and 2,256 on Lake Granbury, which is basically the second major issue with the half study, is that its chosen metrics does not reflect reality and could never produce a balanced impact. The primary flaw is that by focusing on a percentage of features out of service, the study ignores the fact that Granbury has twice as many features as PK. To their definition of balance, a balance ratio produces a significantly larger impact on Lake Granbury. And again, this is theoretical numbers according to the half study. Let me rephrase that a different way. That is 895 voters out of service on PK and 2,556 voters out of service on Granbury. If the BRA were to adopt a ratio balancing the number of features out of service, the ratio would be more like 3.5 to 1, which basically means that we would be up about 4.5 feet. So you think about that right now currently, we're currently at 9 feet low. That means that 4.5 feet is basically attributed to the drought. 4.5 feet is attributed to the change in management. I'm glad that none of you raised your hands earlier because we have the data now to prove it. I've already gone over that. This is something that our hydrologist did, and it shows that the calculation that the historical median is roughly, the 3 to 3.5 number. A drawdown protocol that recognizes and commits to maintenance of this historical relationship is a much more sensible method for achieving a truly balanced impact. I think my slides got a little bit messed up here. We want to say that these errors in adopting of the 1.75 ratio, the drawdown, demonstrates that while Lake Granbury has unquestionably been impacted by the recent drought conditions, the low lake levels are really due significantly in part to BRA's management decisions. And we are here today because we believe that those decisions can be corrected. Per the half study, the BRA wanted to produce a ratio that was reasonable, fair, and equitable, using their own language, for Lake Granbury. I'd like to have a show of hands. Does anybody believe that the half study was fair, reasonable, and equitable for Lake Granbury? Again, not a single hand. If you notice here that if we use the 3.51 ratio, again, like I said earlier, then we would be essentially up to 4.3 feet higher than where we are currently, and Possum Kingdom would be lower by 1.9 feet. The study relied upon an admittedly imprecise method of judging when facilities go out of service. If there's a 2 feet of water at that facility, it works. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but and that is according to the half. Using that measure, the study assumes that in a 5-foot drawdown, more than half of all recreational facilities in Granbury remain usable. In early 2013, Joe and the Safe Lake Granbury group took a survey, and according to this informal but very broad survey, lots of responses, more than 90% of the docks were unusable at that time. This fact alone calls for a reassessment of the drawdown protocol and the methodology that produced it. It is also inconceivable to me, given the numbers and given where we are, to think that there are still some leaders in Hood County that continue to claim that our only problems in Lake Granbury are due to the drought. And I think we've pretty much taken that away. Proposal number 2, we would like to limit diversions below 690 feet. That is the second solution, and it relates to keeping the water in Lake Granbury at a certain level or above a certain level by limiting diversions when the lake dips below that level. Why that's important, we believe, is that the residents of Lake Granbury have always had a justifiable expectation that lake levels will almost always be above that threshold, and the BRA should protect that expectation to whatever extent possible. This is not a novel concept, because even in the water management plan by the Brazos River Authority, they mentioned the 690 level. If you notice, it says 690 feet for more than 3 consecutive years. So they realize that the healthy part of the lake truly needs to be above 690. But notice in the words that it's if possible and consideration should be given to. That is non-binding language. If my 6th grader came and asked me for a horse, and I said I will give consideration to it, I have not bound myself to getting her that horse for Christmas. There is nothing binding. The coalition, we are requesting an enforceable and binding condition as part of the permit. This is not a Haynes and Moon thing. I threw in a couple of my own slides because I think it's important that people understand and are educated about specifically the U.S. Drought Monitor. This is something that the BRA puts up on their website quite a bit. It's also important as we talk about protecting the lake at 690 and above. This is the U.S. Drought Monitor, the most recent one, and I'm sure that everybody has seen a copy of it. I have actually called the guy that runs it. He's at the University of Nebraska. And it's very interesting because there are certain variables that play into the U.S. Drought Monitor. One of those variables is the dryness of the soil, precipitation levels for a certain area, and surprisingly enough, lake levels, which is pretty interesting. Do you notice the red line in the middle of the map? Do you know what that is? That is the Colorado River. Do you think that it didn't rain just on top of the Colorado River? Kind of looks that way, right? Well, let me do a close-up. That's what I call a manufactured drought. If you oversell water in a water system, you can actually manufacture a drought status. It happened in Colorado River. They're under a more severe drought status because in 2011 they oversold water to the rice farmers. So anytime that the BRA mentions the drought, you always need to be a little bit wary of where they're going, because when you oversell water, you can actually create a drought. And one more thing on drought, we are at our lowest level ever. And it's supposedly the worst drought from the 1950s. Does anybody know what stage that Lake Granbury is in drought status right now? There are 4 stages, 1 being the lowest and 4 being the highest. Anybody know? We're drought stage 1, that is correct. So even their own methodology, they're saying that, oh, the drought is not that bad because we're only in drought stage 1. Proposal number 3 is to alter the storage relationship between Granbury and Squaw Creek Reservoir. We think we can get creative there. We would like to bring Limited to the table and to discuss creative solutions with them as they try to be a good neighbor to Granbury. Ultimately, the members of the coalition want to see a recognition of their reasonable historical expectations and some concrete acknowledgments that the health and viability of Lake Granbury will not always yield to a decision to sell more water to downstream customers. I believe that it is also part of the responsibility of our state elected officials to help protect us from state organizations that make really bad management decisions. The HAF study, quite frankly, there's numerous examples really of governments going awry and implementing policies that wasn't carefully thought out. We can all think of policies that has happened. For us in Hood County, that is the HAF study. It was implemented unilaterally by the BRA despite major concerns from citizens at both Lake Granbury and Possum Kingdom Lake. It was implemented without a plan B. The current drought has exposed how fatally flawed the study was for Granbury, and now we are dealing with the repercussions of a bad implementation. A single study that could produce so much economic harm to an area should have been fully scrutinized at all levels before implementation with a Plan B in case the original assumptions weren't true. The good news is that the coalition has determined that much of the current drawdown is avoidable and, more importantly, fixable. 40 years of history, as Mickey alluded to earlier, had established an expectation that water levels in Lake Granbury will almost always be at 690 feet or above 96% of the time. As we stated in the white paper, and I encourage everyone to read the white paper, we hope that our position statements educate and motivates a member of the community to join us in this discussion. And I thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks, Doc. Appreciate it. No, that's what I, oh, is it on? There we go. Well, there we go. Yeah. That's what I really appreciate about Todd and Nikki, you know, they're kind of like used to be, we'll say, used to kind of sailboat on Lake Granbury, nice and smooth, and, you know, hardly any waves and stuff, and they're great for our coalition because they kind of keep us there. But on the other hand, you know, you kind of have some guys that are like a, you know, a jet boat going through a non-wake zone under 377. There's a couple guys like that. And the next guy I want to introduce, you know, if you've ever been to a city council, you might experience this with him, but he is a good guy. We do appreciate him running the city council and helping with that over there and stuff. So, and I wanted to introduce Tony Allen.
I'm not young, I can't jump up like you young guys. First off, thank you, every one of you, for coming out. Who was at the last meeting we had with the Waterfront Association? There you go. Well, if y'all remember, Steve Berry got up and spoke first. We wouldn't let him do it tonight. You know, he done a great job, and I got real nervous after he spoke. Kind of him now. But first off, I want to thank three people for getting our Lieutenant Governor here tonight, arranging it, getting things working. You may not know their names, but I'll tell you who they are and what they do. Don and Reed Poe, and call them Chris. Don and Reed. Don and Reed Poe, they headed up the Tea Party for Hood County, and they've done a great job. Call them Chris. Y'all might not know him, but you probably see signs all over District 60. So he helped us to get this thing done tonight, and we appreciate you all three. Also, we had a meeting, or I guess it was, we had them on to come. On Sunday, we got an email saying that Lieutenant Governor couldn't come. And it was a conflict in which he was truthful with us, admitted immediately. And we found out he couldn't get here because our lawyers was going to be involved in it. So they dropped out. These two lawyers here, Ricky Parson and Todd Gardner, the new lawyers for Hood County, did a great job, guys, a great job. And so anyway, we had a scheduled meeting back in January for BRA, and it got canceled because politics got involved. So today at 3:15, my phone rang, and it was a 310 number, I believe. Well, I didn't recognize it, I left it on voicemail. So about 15 minutes later, I said, I'll see who it is who left the voicemail. Phone rang on this, Lieutenant Governor let me know, I think it's your campaign manager, Chris, said, Tony, I've got bad news. Well, my heart just went down, and I didn't know to turn it off or listen to it. So I listened to it. He said the plane was delayed and they're going to be about 10 or 15 minutes late. Well, they didn't know we didn't need him here until 6:30 anyway. So do appreciate him coming. I got the opportunity to meet Lieutenant Governor back about 4 months ago. Ring and Don had a lunch at their house and dinner. And for me, I was real fortunate. I got to sit right across the table from him. And as soon as we sat down, I started talking about our water problem. And The more I talked, the more he'd text. And I thought, man, am I bugging him that bad? We ain't talking any damn attention to him, excuse my language. And, sorry about that. But anyway, so Cullen, he leaned over, he was there, he leaned over to me, he said, Tony, won't you let him meet? I said, I'll give him a breath in a minute. When he got through, he said, hey, I was just texting the girls at the office. Said, I got somebody already on this. She's gonna call us back in 30 minutes. About 27 minutes. Phone rung, he had her on the phone. He said, here, tell Tony what's going on. She had already called, talked to VRA, got things that are working. 2 girls at his office has called us and worked with us also. I'm not up here politicking trying to get votes for him, but he has done what he said he would do. Especially being here tonight, makes me feel good. It is quite an honor for me and a pleasure to welcome our Lieutenant Governor, David Dewhurst.
Tony, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what happened. I didn't even get to the first course, and Tony started talking about water. And but we got our Deputy Chief of Staff on the phone, and we started that conversation. I'm delighted to be here this evening. In September, we had such a nice visit in your home. Thank you very much, Ren and Don. Thank you so much. And a group of very patriotic Texans was there, including Tony. And Tony kept talking about water, and he kept talking about water, so I focused on water. We needed to be focusing on that. You know, it was interesting, when we first said, sure, we'll come visit, and then it looked like I was going to be right in the middle of talking about a contested case. I can't get involved in talking about a contested case. But I can come out here and visit with you because I understand how much you care for your lake, I understand where you're coming from, and talk about our water plan, talk about, thank goodness you passed, you voted for Prop 6 this past November. We've got $2 billion, which we're going to invest in construction, literally building hundreds of projects around the state, and I want to be supportive, not only in the Granbury area, but throughout the state of Texas. I'm looking over here and I saw Ben Stratman. He is representing our good Senator Brian Birdwell. Thank you very much for being here, Ben. Thank you. And I'm told Jim Keffer is here. Is Jim? I'm sorry. Good to see you. All right. You had the cap on, Jim. I didn't know it. All right. You know, a number of people told me, David, don't go there Saturday night. I said, why not? They said, because people are mad in Granbury. Aren't they mad in Granbury? And they're going to give you an earful. And I said, well, that's no reason not for me to go. I said, I think that's part of my job description. I get an earful all the time. So, you know, everyone wants to tell me about a problem, and that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm paid as a legislator. Jim and I get paid the big bucks. $600 a month. No, let me clarify that. $600 pre-tax per month. So, but I'm here this evening to learn from you all and to listen. And I know I'll walk away knowing a lot more about exactly the situation you're in than when I walked in here this evening. But I thought I'd just start off for a couple of minutes and talk about my perspective as Lieutenant Governor and having worked with the fine members in the House and the Senate on passing House Bill 4. But let me first say that, you know, we all remember the expression in the rough and tumble days back in the 19th century, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And that was true back then. As I listened to just a few minutes of the talk just a second ago, I think it's still true today. Because what we're talking about is one of our most precious resources, and that's water. And since the late part of 2010, this state has been suffering under a bad drought. The worst drought that I'm that we've seen in the history of the state of Texas. And it affects all of us, whether you want to water your cattle, or water your lawn, or water ski. It affects all of us. And communities all across the state are affected by this. Benjamin Franklin once said, when the well is dry, we know the worth of water. True. But I've spent a large part of the last decade working on water and water solutions. When I came into the legislature 10 years ago, there was no question in my mind. I could see it as clearly as I'm looking at Kevin's baseball cap. You know, I could see it clearly. We're going to double our population over somewhere in the range of 40 years. Today we're 26 million people. We're going to approximately 50 million people in 40 years. And that's why even in that first year, in 2003, going into 2004, I started working on a successor bill to what former Lieutenant Governor Bob Bullock had done, Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, we call it Senate Bill 3. And so I drafted it up. It set aside the footprint for 19 different new reservoirs, gave legal protection to historic water rights, and created uniformity among all the groundwater conservation districts that have a common aquifer, and coming up with a common drawdown rate. Well, in 2005, I passed that bill over the House. Unfortunately, it wasn't passed. The Speaker would not pass it. So I came roaring back in 2007 with even a better, bolder version of Senate Bill 3. And I learned something in those resulting 2 years. So I somehow mysteriously, about a dozen of the then Speaker's favorite bills that passed out of committee apparently found their way into my desk. I don't know how that happened. And I sat on those bills, and I sat on them until about 4 hours from midnight. You remember that, Ben? 4 hours from midnight that last night, in which time the House saw the wisdom of passing Senate Bill 3, and we were able to pass those roughly a dozen bills very, very quickly. And Senate Bill 3, as I said, was the first time we've ever appropriated general revenue, your tax dollars, your Texas tax dollars, to go in on building new water resources. And it included a stair-step investment schedule that totaled $1 billion over 20 years to develop new water. And it set aside under state law the acreage for 19 new reservoirs in the state. So in 2009, we came back, we secured even more general revenue, and then we got more water resources. And this past year, in 2013, working with Chairman Ritter, Chairman Fraser in the Senate, they're in my office frequently. We work with them, we work with the Water Development Board, and I want to thank each and every one of you all that voted for Prop 6, because this is a cutting-edge tool that will enable all of us to be able to move forward with the state providing low-cost financing for the construction. Now, historically, the State Water Board has provided 30-year financing. Well, if we need to build in order to double our water between today and 40 years, if we have to double our water, it's going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 billion. I hate to tell you this, but the state of Texas just doesn't have $50 billion sitting around in a sock somewhere. But sitting with the analysts of the Water Development Board, I spent 3 days with them, just like I used to do when build cogeneration plants, running different options. And $2 billion that we use it for construction, and we bring in the market, we bring in and we provide the permanent financing with the bond market, we'll build right at about $45 billion worth of projects. So that's a big, big move forward. We reorganized the Water Development Board, and I think that's important. It's now led by 3 commissioners, one of which I insisted has to be from rural Texas. And we also installed a legislative advisory board, 3 senators and 3 representatives, to make sure that the plan follows our legislative intent. Since Since all of our borrowers, cities, counties, and river districts, are political subdivisions of the state and have a rate base, they're all going to be able to draw down on AA rated bonds. What does that mean? That means low interest rates. The $2 billion comes from the rainy day fund, and it's not like we're rating the rainy day fund. That money will be lent out, it's a revolver, lent out with interest and paid back, lent, paid back. And over 40 years, I just picked two numbers. If we kept the interest rate low, let's say it was 2%. In 40 years, that $2 billion is $4.5 billion. If it was 3%, that $2 billion is $6.5 billion, because we're not going to stop needing new water as our population, because our population is not going to stop growing 40 years from now. We may be at 50 million, but it's going to continue to grow. So we have a continuing need for this. Now, I think I'm hoping our commissioners are going to take a real hard look at each one of these projects, make sure that they're viable, the sponsors are standing behind them, and this new funding is called the State Water Implementation Fund, SWIFT. And again, that's what everyone voted on in November. But we're at a crossroads. Today, Texas is number one in every economic category I can think of. We're number one in the country. Best place to do business the last 4 years. And don't feel bad about that year that we weren't number one, because we were number two. We're number one strongest economy in America. If we were a separate nation, no, I'm not going there. If we were a separate nation, we would have the 14th strongest economy in the world. We're number one in job creation, you all. I'm a lifelong businessman. I'm a career businessman. That's why I'm pleased I still have my business, because, you know, I told you the big bucks we earn. But you have created jobs. Government doesn't create jobs. All government can do is either create a good business climate or a bad business climate. And you know which one I wanted to create. And you all have created more new jobs each of the last 3 years than the rest of the country combined. That's amazing. We have 8% of the population. 8% of the population has created more new jobs than 92% of the population for 3 years in a row. As of last week, we're the number one exporting state in the country for the 12th year in a row. But we're also number one fastest growing population in the country. Our population is growing 1,200 people a day. Wow, 1,200 people a day. Again, 40 years we'll go from 26 to 50 million people. And that population growth is the reason why we're going to need to double our water supplies, we're going to need to double our lane miles, and we're going to need to double our electricity generation. And how do we get to the top? We got to the top because we've got a great business climate here. Capital's liquid and can go anywhere, but you all, Texans, work hard. So, today, I've tried to make it as to the best of my ability to make it irresistible. Capital can go anywhere. And so that's why, working with the 5 members in the House and the Senate, we've cut your taxes 54 times for almost $16 billion. Back in 2006, 2007, we cut local school property taxes by 1/3, which means we cut property taxes by 1/4. I hate to see government waste money. So what we did is we have eliminated or consolidated 57 state agencies in Texas, because I hate to waste money. You all have created almost 2 million new jobs in the last 10 years. But again, our population is doubling. As a small government, a conservative, our job is to double water, double our lane miles, without doubling the size of our government. So what's next? You know, there's no saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. I know where we're going, and it's the 2012 Texas Water Development Board water plan. We need to develop about 8 to 9 million acre feet over the next 50 years. 8 to 9 million acre feet in order to keep up with our growing population. And that's about 1.6 to 2 million acre feet a decade, but we're already short. That means over the next 10 years, we're going to have to develop 3 million new acre feet if we're going to take care of our current water needs. So today, we're pursuing an all of the above approach. Reservoirs, off-channel reservoirs, conservation, reuse, some cases drilling some wells, and desalinization, which is actually reverse osmosis, are all on the table. You look at all of these, keep in mind, there's 2.7 billion. We need 8 to 9 million acre feet. There's 2.7 billion acre feet of brackish water, not too far under the surface. Problem with that is, if you use reverse osmosis, desalinization, but reverse osmosis, the cost can get up to $700, $800 or so, $900 per acre foot. And some reservoirs that are forecasted, being planned by the Water Development Board, can get down to $300 an acre foot, $400. So their cost is a factor. But we also can't forget that we have to do this. We have to generate more water statewide and for the area. We can't forget that farming and ranching is the second largest industry in the state of Texas, right? Second largest. And accounts for about 37% of all of our future water uses. We can't forget that we've got the oil and gas industry that has a demand for a lot of water. But it's also strengthening our economy, creating jobs, and helping us move forward towards energy independence. So while there are a lot of demands on our current water sources, there's even a bigger demand for our expanded water needs in the future. Now, as your Lieutenant Governor, and all of us with a statewide office, we're going to look at all this on a state basis and individually. That's why in the water plan, there are some over 500 different projects. And our objective is to get as many built that are truly going to help the sponsors area. We're going to look at it across the state. So I expect that when we go into questions and answers in a couple of minutes, I'm going to sense a lot of frustration. I already know that in advance. But that's all right, because I've been in the room with a lot of other people around the state, and they're unhappy too. I mean, we got a real bad drought going on. So there are a lot of unhappy people across the room, and I bet there are quite a few in this room this evening. But I'm here to do everything I can to help. So I see we're going to have to address this as a legislature, as Lieutenant Governor, on a statewide basis. I think we're making progress. Our biggest problem, obviously, is the fact that we haven't had much rain since the fall of 2010. And I'm 49% kidding and 51% serious when I say we need to pray. I pray for you all almost every single day of my life. Every morning I start off praying for the physical safety of you and your family. That's why I meet regularly with federal agencies with just abbreviations in their name. Almost every day I'm praying for you, for good health for you and your family, and for economic prosperity, being able to find a good job. But it is not lost on me that recently, in one day, Lake Limestone got 99,000 acre feet of new water into it. So it can happen. I believe in prayer. I really do. We understand that the sponsors, our cities, our counties, our river authorities, are taking a long-term view. And I understand everybody in this room is in a hurry. Well, can you go fix the problem, David, for tomorrow? Well, I don't think I get it solved by tomorrow afternoon. It's Sunday. You want to be out on your boat. I got all that. I understand that. But everybody has a lot of pressure on them. And a lot of people don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to be second-guessed. And unfortunately, that's a characteristic. Sure, I don't want to make a mistake. But I think at this time in our history, with this drought going on, with the fact that the legislature came together and made this investment, and that you all have approved, it's time, yeah, sure, for accountability, but it's a time for action. I think it's time for action, for bold action. We need to move. And that's one of the reasons why every time I bring over the commissioners from the Water Development Board, I'm asking, are you ready for our population to double? Are you there yet? Now, some are going to be concerned about overbuilding. This is not why you all are meeting this evening, but this is a concern because in the next 40 years, for instance, Dallas-Fort Worth, according to the Water Development Plan, is going to almost triple in population. It's going to go from 8 million, the Metroplex, 8 million to about 22, 23 million in 40 years. And so when you look at what your needs are, you're going to have to plan for future needs. Otherwise, you're going to be right back to the drawing boards. But these are things that we can work with the different localities on discounted interest rates during construction, balloons on permanent financing. And now, because I've held you hostage here for a few minutes, and I want to give you part of my perspective on where I'm coming from. Let's talk about Lake Granbury. I know it's your home. I know it's your home. I know it's just outside your window, and it's low. You're not going to feel better if I were to name all the different places that are soon to be out of water. Towns in Burnett, Riel, Tom Green County are having to truck in water today just for drinking water. So you got some coming, but I know this is an important issue for you. That's why I want to hear from you. Tony and I talked in September. I've got a general overview. I have gone and collected a lot of information. I've had 3 meetings on this the last 2 weeks as I was trying to get up to speed to come here this evening. I've talked to Phil Ford over at the Brazos River Authority. I've gone through the 2012 water plan in an attempt to find, are there projects out there that will help solve this problem? I'm looking for ideas. There is a contested case in front of the administrative law judge on the systems operation permit, which could help Granbury. I know there have been some ideas to work with the Army Corps of Engineers on adjusting pool levels. I'm looking closely with my staff on Allen's Creek project, which could dramatically help alleviate some of the downstream demand on Granbury water. That project was postponed. I'm looking at how we can move it up, and that may help some. And I personally ensured that we go back and we do an audit of the Brazos River Authority, and I included that. Should I have led off with that? Yeah. Always learning, Jim. The audit. And I put that in the audit plan that I signed off late last year. Also, we passed a bill last year requiring the Legislative Budget Board, that's like our Congressional Budget Office, but our Legislative Budget Board, to go in and look at all of our river authorities and make sure they're operating in the best interest of the people of the state of Texas. And that includes lots of transparency and lots of sunshine. At the end of the day, we may find that the answer comes, it may come from negotiation. It may come from legislation. But I hope there's a win-win solution here. I've been trying to achieve that in each of the last 10 years that I've been your lieutenant governor. As a businessman, as a rancher, I understand how important water is. As a dad, I want to make sure that when our daughter grows up, she stays here in Texas. We've got enough water for the residents of the state of Texas. And I want to keep pursuing solutions, whether it's sustaining crops downstream or sustaining the value of your real estate, you all, here in Lake Granbury. It's precious to all of us. And some I don't know how quickly we can do some of the things we're looking at, but I will promise you that my door is open to you, I'll work with you, and I'll do everything in my ability to try and find projects that'll help you and other communities all across the state of Texas, and we'll try and come up with a fair solution. So I'm literally rolling up my sleeves. I want to work with you. If you'll continue working with me, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. So let me stop at that point. I know that there's undoubtedly some questions from you all. Rest assured that I may know a number of different subjects, but you all, every one of you all knows more about Lake Granbury than I do at this point. But I have a lot of paper, I have my pen here, and I'm here. Thank you all.
Can y'all hear me? There we go.
Questions? Anybody have a question?
I'll wait on that. My question is, I understand a lot of frustration in the representatives, elected people that I talk to with the authority system that we've set up in Texas. These organizations were created 50 years ago, and they seem to have gotten to the point where they're above the legislation that created them. Is there any plans or any thought in the process of revising or changing the river authority system inside the water plant?
We've had a number of different proposals that have been presented. We looked at our river authorities a couple of years ago. We started to go into a lot of depth, changing some of the governance. A number of these river authorities, not BRA, but a number of them, LCRA and others, are mini utilities, large hydro and generation plants, in addition to water suppliers. And I think it's time, that's one of the reasons I want to see the audit by the state auditor, who's a very, very aggressive, smart fellow that wants to make state government better. So the answer is a reserved yes. I want to see what the audit says. I want to see what the recommendations, and they'll be out in a couple of months by the Legislative Budget Board, are as they look at all of our different river authorities and see how they're operating and whether their operations are in the best interest of you and all the other 26 million people who live here in the state. Because I work for you all. Y'all invited me here. I didn't want to get into a debate back and forth. It's not my role to be commenting on a contested case, but to come here and visit with you and try and give you my perspective on why I worked on water for the last 10 years and what I want to see in doubling our water supply and how I want to make sure everybody is protected is something that I'm 100% behind.
Governor,
Yes, sir.
from listening to your talk, I would say that anybody who doesn't live in Texas is not very smart. I've lived in about 15 states, and I chose to come back to this state to retire. But as I drive around over this state, these reservoirs, even in central Texas and East Texas, aren't even half full. Maybe they're a little more than half full. We really have a water problem in this state. Yet, the governor has 2 expansion funds that he's spending money on economic development like crazy to get more people to move here. And you said it yourself, we don't have the water for these other people. Now, I'm obviously not talking about Granbury here, but we have a big problem in this state. And I would suggest that the governor take the money that's in those 2 economic development funds and start building desalination plants or doing something to ease this crisis, because it's only going to get worse as we keep enticing these people to come in here with that grant money and the abatement of taxes in addition.
Sir, I think you're 100% right. I have long had a problem with the abatement on taxes, and it's even magnified by the problem that your local school districts, and I'm a big supporter of our public schools, but they can, in order to raise more property taxes, give abatements, and without consulting the state's on the hook to fund the difference in that tax and what they would have gotten. So it puts real strain on the state and our financing. But at the same time, we've been trying to be competitive. There are 2 funds. One is called the Enterprise Fund, and that's simply when jobs are created to provide some transition training money so we can be competitive with other states. And that's actually the smaller of the 2. The other one is the Emerging Technology Fund, which I'm not sure that I disagree with you at all. So thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Lieutenant Governor, we're over here on the other side, right here.
Yes, sir, sorry.
Well, I wanted to thank you very much for bringing up asking people to pray for rain. I think that's really important and something we all should be doing. And also you touched slightly on the other part of that is, well, we do need to pray for rain, and that can only come through the grace of God. We need to have a plan in place and enforceable, which I think would be auditing and oversight of all of our river authorities, so that once we do get our needed rain, we will be able to keep our water. And I speak to that having just retired from a large telecommunications company, being answerable to something like the PUC. And I'm glad to hear you say that you think it's time that all of our river authorities have accountability to all of us, because the water above ground in Texas belongs to all of us, not just the select few authorities. And thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Anybody else questions?
Questions?
I'll get this real quick.
We got one. We'll wait.
Yes, sir, Governor, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you.
We're very supportive of you.
Thank you.
You're very proud of the fact that you made $600 a month pre-tax.
We're proud of it. I'm simply saying, maybe I ought to work on my jokes a little bit. All right, so they need it. All right, so I need to practice my delivery and my jokes. All right, I'm with you. Okay. Yeah, my wife agrees with you. My wife agrees with you.
That being said, we understand that the executive director, we already made some excess of $400,000 a year. Can you answer that?
No, and that is a fact that I did not know about.
Actually, we did, I will clarify that. We got, recently we did a request with the DRA, and it is about $245,000, but in 2011, he got a $20,000 bonus on top of that, so it's about $350,000. So it's a lot more than what the governor makes.
I'm not sure it's proper for me to comment on that.
Right
Anybody
here.
over here?
We got one right here. Take turns.
Gentleman in the red
Go
shirt.
ahead. Where are you, Joe? Go ahead, Judy.
Hi, Mr. Goodhart. My name is Terry Snyder. Not a single person in this room knows who I am because I live in Fort Worth. I'm a weekender. I have a lake house on the main body, and I've had it for 2.5 decades. And I love coming down to Granbury, and I've watched Granbury change dramatically. The school system, I was a band director before I became, I hate to say it, stockbroker, and I've helped out with volunteering down here, and I've loved watching this whole area change. It has changed, just like you say, it's changed dramatically. But what's happened here in the last 3 or 4 years is something that I think we do need some help from you and other legislators to address. The Trinity River Authority, as you know, in Fort Worth, has had multiple problems with infighting and different things going on with it. It's a very odd thing to vote for very few people. Now, since I live in Fort Worth, I don't vote for the Brazos River Authority. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where multiple folks do. It's just one of those things that are all appointed, and it's just, they're appointed. I guess we don't get to say anything. But the bottom line comes down to this. There's a certain point when common sense needs to prevail. I'm not going to brag about we need some common sense to look at what's happening to this area, and you, my friend, can help us a little bit in our effort to just try to get common sense back into this equation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lieutenant Governor Richard.
Good evening, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
I have a comment, and you don't have to answer this one, so you can take a break for a second. This is for the coalition. Have you considered the effect of Senate Bill 3 on the flows from PK and from Granbury in your evaluation? If not, call me. I'm a stakeholder committee member, and I'll explain to you as much as I know. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll run you down. Judy, you got something over there?
Anybody back here? Question?
Questions over here?
Tony's got one.
All right, Tony, I'll get to it.
Really, I figured we'd be here to midnight. I figured everybody would be asking you questions. One question, and we hear this a lot. We passed Proposition 6, we passed this, we'll do an audit, all these things. When is that audit going to be completely done? We know exactly what we got. Number one question. Number two, Proposition 6. How many reservoirs is that going to build in the state of Texas?
Well, I know the answer to your first question, and I don't know the answer to your second question, because that's going to depend upon the recommendations of the three commissioners with a little bit of oversight by our legislative oversight board. But the audit will be completed by late summer, early fall. Finished. And we'll have a report.
Okay, what I have been told by people in the Senate or reps in different areas, not the one behind me, that Proposition 6 would not build one reservoir.
No, that's not true. No.
It will build reservoirs.
Yeah,
Okay. If it will build one, did it take 18 years to get one approved and built?
It takes a long time. It's a battle, uphill battle against the EPA and with the Corps of Engineers. So for that reason, that's why I said we're going to have to look at a broad menu. I said all the above. We're going to have to look at, from on day one, conservation, reuse. We're going to have to look at some of the things we can get done right away, because we need 3 million new acre feet of water during the next 10 years. And so that's why, although I set aside in Senate Bill 3 the 19 reservoir footprints and the acreage, I envision, and I have to talk, we can easily talk to both the House and Senate, and we can talk to the three commissioners. But I envision us trying to go after some low-hanging fruit quickly over the next 10 years, because we're going to need 3 million new acre feet. And then have 1 or 2 reservoirs that we're starting to work on, because it's going to take 10 years, 15 years in order to build them. Now, some have already had work done on them. Some we've already done a lot of the environmental work, and we've done right-of-way work. So there is some progress that's already made on some.
All right. The last deal is on Proposition 6.
Right.
I thought, and maybe I read it wrong, but I thought that's where counties and cities and stuff was going to borrow the money. It wasn't going to give it to them. It would be
Right.
borrowed.
Right.
And
Right. Right. And that's why we're,
Okay, if it's borrowed money, that's where it comes back in, ties into Proposition 3, doesn't it? Where you're getting 18 reservoirs. You're gonna use the interest money on Proposition 6 to have the money to build the reservoirs, right?
we're gonna use the $2 billion as the principal, and as we lend it out, it's gonna be paid back to us when the construction is finished. And that's why we need some short-term, medium-term, just like any portfolio. And they'll be paid back to us with a to-be-agreed-upon nominal interest rate. But that interest rate over 40 years will double, if not triple, the size of the corpus.
Yes, but Proposition 6, $2 billion is not gonna build one reservoir. The interest off the money is gonna build reservoirs, right?
No.
Where have you got one scheduled out of that $2 billion?
The actual projects will start being named according to the current plan with the Water Development Board this fall. Going in at the end of the year, the selection and the calling through projects that will be starting to name those. So the $2 billion, as was envisioned in the legislative intent, will be used to build X number of projects immediately, and as they're built and the permanent financing comes in with the bond market, because these are all rated AA credits, the state will be paid back and we relend that money. In other words, we're lending it to Tony for his project, and as soon as it's paid back, we lend it to Jim for his project, and as soon as that, and meanwhile, we're doing that on 50, 100 different projects. Yeah.
Lieutenant Governor, we're going to wrap up here in a minute, but I had a question for you, because Tony asking that question reminded me of something I've been asked many times, and this has to do with the local level, but you can apply it to the state level, is they talked about building reservoirs and going back and you know, the time it takes to get those lined up. Right now, the BRA has $90 million in their bank account, and one of the biggest complaints that we seem to have is that they don't put anything back into the infrastructure in the basin. And one of the questions is, why can't they, rather than worry about so much about trying to go out and build reservoirs, which should be part of the package, but why couldn't they come back and spend some of that money and start dredging some of these lakes? And they don't have to go through that all that process. We've asked the BRA about this, and they just pretty well put their noses up and say, we're just not going to put money back into that infrastructure. And that's why a lot of people get upset here, because we're not getting solutions. They're not offering solutions. And this is a way you can come back and dredge a lake, and you know, you could probably get maybe a 10 or 20% increase in water capacity.
I think these are all appropriate questions to be asking not only the BRA, but our other river authorities. Absolutely. Representative Kerry, you want to say something? Okay, what's your question? Okay. Sir?
I'm an elected official just like you are, Lieutenant Governor. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Pleased to be.
The county lost $105 million last year on taxable revenue to the gas and oil because of the loss of it, because of the lowering the price and so forth. We did a report, the Coalition and Economic Development Corp here in the county did a report, $45,000 study, to what this was going to cost us with our lake being where it's at today. I lived here all my life. My grandfather fought the BRA because they didn't want the lake to come in because it was eminent domain and what they wanted to pay for their property. When the lake came in, we were told 2 more reservoirs would be built above Possum Kingdom. But the state has never done that. Okay? It's never been funded. The question is directed to you tonight as the county commissioner. When we lose, when we weren't here a while ago, but 33% of our ad valorem values are up and down the tributary of the BRA and Lake Granbury. Everybody in this room sitting here has lost their value on their home. It's not about crybabies that can't get their boats out of the slip or they can't get their jet ski in. It's a banker that loans somebody $500,000 and today that house is worth $250,000. This doesn't affect just the lake owners. It affects banks. It affects mortgage companies. I'm elected. I'm the first person they see at the grocery store, at the restaurant, and they're mad because we have to raise taxes. But yet the state won't raise taxes. You push it down to the local level. And I'm tired of that. But the big problem I have is up and down the tributary, BRA has so much power that we, the county judge sitting there, the commissioner, city councilman, mayor, city manager, can't get in and sit down and deal with them on a one-on-one basis for the betterment of the community. And you need to go back there and understand, and as the gentleman in the back said that has a lakefront property, you can help us. With $90 million sitting in the bank account, when we lose our ad valorem this summer, and we're raising taxes at the local level, we all get eliminated. We get voted out. But yet the BRA keeps doing business as usual. Thank you.
Sounds like we got a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming and I appreciate all of your input. And I wanted to remind you, several references have been made to the people that we vote for. And so I want you to remember that the early voting starts February 18th, and the actual voting then, the final vote is on March 4th. So I want to make sure all of you dedicated, committed people are going to go to the polls and vote for who you think is going to be in our best interest. Okay? Thank you all for being here.